First Baptist, we are celebrating 150 years. We are extremely blessed. God has shown favor over and over again. And as we celebrate this 150 years, we want to understand where we've come from and how God has blessed us. It is true that He is a God of ages, that He is Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. And we would not be here if it had not been for that God who's kept us all of those years. Of course, He hasn't kept each individual, but we are part of something greater. That what we do here, the vision that God casts, the ministries that we participate in, the lives that are changed and souls that are saved, they're all part of a greater and larger plan put in motion by God. It's Dr. Martin Luther King who tells us that we are not makers of history, but we are made by our history. It was right here under these bushes and by this Blackwater River that our forefathers met and gathered, worshiping and praying for days like this. They sung songs like Amazing Grace. They would stand here with hands bruised and battered, but then still cry out, "Precious Lord, take my hand." And with those hands that God grabbed, they were able to erect an edifice. And even today, the First Baptist Church has the honor and the distinction of being the oldest organization of continuous existence in all of Franklin. In 1866, it was established here, and that's important because in 1866, that was the first year that slaves were made to be free. And with that freedom, these slaves came together, built a building, started a church, created a movement, and ushered God into this city. It was on these grounds that are now labeled Barrett's Landing, after Mr. Barrett allowed congregants to come down and worship, that the Lord was lifted up and made high and glorified. Here we are today in 2016, still standing on those shoulders, the very shoulders that stood in this Franklin, Virginia, the very shoulders that waded and did baptisms in these waters, the very shoulders that lifted hands and arms to praise and worship an awesome God. And today we stand in this beautiful edifice on the second floor sanctuary with microphones, pews, screens, and computers. But while here, we must remember how far God has brought us. It's important that as you go forward, you remember where you've come from. One writer says to communicate the truths of history is an act of hope for the future. And we hope that as we go through this year, that you too would remember all of those who labored before us. Remember our first pastor, Reverend Joseph Gregory, our second, Reverend S.W. Timms, Reverend Guy Powell, Reverend W.E. Sanderlin, Reverend M.E. Gurse, Dr. M.C. Allen, Dr. W.R. Asburn, Reverend G.C. Lassiter, Reverend Samuel Franklin Daly, Dr. Henry Blunt, Dr. Shigowis. And now we all gather here together as ministries, as friends, and as family to continue the legacy that God began when He granted this city, this state, this country, and planted in His kingdom the First Baptist Church.